Today, we're deep diving into a world of personal accountability and integrity with my guest, Jeffrey Klubeck. Jeffrey is not only a renowned speaker and author, but he's also crafted a unique methodology called the integrity game that helps individuals, teams, and organizations improve their overall structural integrity. During our conversation, we're going to explore topics such as understanding the link between your actions and your integrity, and the importance of knowing your strengths and how setting your purpose can provide you a firm foundation for success. So let's get locked in and get ready to challenge the way you look at accountability and integrity in your life. Welcome to Growth Mode. All right, Jeffrey, I'm stoked to sit down and talk to you. A lot of my journey, I've done a lot of cool things, but I've always seemed to find myself in like leadership roles. I've always been a sales guy, self accountable, and I've always been a top performer in anything I do. Um, but I've found that intrinsically, I've had to find accountability outside of myself
Yeah.
versus relying on self accountability to get things done. So I do things like setting traps where I'll go to LinkedIn and said, I'm going to do this. If I don't, this is going to happen, right? Whenever this is going to happen, usually is a pretty gnarly consequence, but it benefits other people to see what I do. And that seemed to work really well for me over the years. But what I haven't been able to really get good at is self accountability, being able to hold myself accountable to myself. I've had to go outside myself. Why do people need outside influence versus the inside?
Yeah, there's only so far you're gonna get. First of all, every job is an inside job, so you're off to
Fair,
a good
fair.
you're off to a good start, right? And you, from what I'm hearing, you probably are better off than most when it comes to this notion of self accountability. But the problem is we have these things called egos, right? And ego is a sense of self, right? And as honest or as evolved as you may be in your self talk, at some point, number one, the percentages are high that you're going to let yourself off the hook. We have
Yes.
rationale, we have justification, right? And so our internal, yeah, but when it goes unchecked, we, oh, I was going to do this, but oh, this came up. And then we accept our own crap,
And
right?
we're not trying to say they're excuses. We're like, oh, it's an explanation. No
Well,
bullshit.
it's
It's an
so funny.
excuse.
Yeah. Yeah. The difference between an excuse or a reason.
Right.
I'm not
Right.
excusing. Okay. Well, and then we can get into that's when you get into an interesting thing. It's like, fine. Cause here's one thing that, if you've got discipline, if you got any form of leadership in your background, what made you a top performer? What's your background that made you self-disciplined and made you be a top producer in all of your endeavors, et cetera, et cetera? That's going to get you a certain way. And so but guess what? If you ever tell yourself the reason that you're not going to do something that you told yourself you were going to do, right? Fine. If you want to call it a reason instead of an excuse, but it's an excuse unless you recommit to the thing. If
Mm,
are you going to decommit or recommit? Are you going to shit or get off the pot? Right.
right.
So
Yep.
if you just tell yourself, well, I said I was going to do this, but this other thing, so I've got a reason for not doing that now. And so you, so I'm going to recommit to this thing. If you take the next step of recommitting to the thing that you're decommitting to, now it is a reason that you're not doing the thing rather than an excuse. So when
I
people
like that
like
definition.
people are bullshitting all the time, Donnie, like, oh, I'm a procrastinator. I'm a procrastinator. Like you are full of shit. Because if you call yourself a procrastinator, the, what you're trying to really communicate is that you get it done at some point. You just took your time. That you ultimately get it. Right? But people use the word procrastination for the things they haven't done yet, not for the things that they got done, but took a long time. So the ego is always going to let us off the hook. The ego is going to rationalize it. The ego is going to let us down easily. So first of all, we buy our own bullshit, right?
For
Second
sure.
of all, second of all, my lenses have got different mosaic than yours. So when you go outside for new accountability, you're not just getting accountability on did you do what you said you were going to do it or not. You're being accountable for your perspectives. You're being accountable for the why. You're being accountable when you have a different perspective, a different lens through it, right? Now it just opens everything up. So a lot of times when we get into talking about it today, and when I've asked people, and I've asked thousands of people, what's integrity? What is integrity?
Mm,
And people, I always get two answers. One is do what you say you're going to do, and the other is do the right thing regardless of who's watching, right? And I like those two answers for a couple of reasons. Most
right.
people would agree with those, but underneath it all, vibrationally, Tony, those are judgment-based answers. You didn't do what you said, or you didn't do the right thing. So people are sitting in judgment of others when you talk about accountability, integrity. Accountability is always going to feel like an attack if we're not ready to
Right.
be 100% responsible for our own behavior.
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So when you talk about an external accountability source, you are so ambitious, so driven. One of the reasons you want an external accountability source is because you rightfully don't trust yourself to do the best job.
That is 100% truth, right? I know me, right? And I
Yeah.
know that if left to my own devices, there's a lot of reasons I can just, well, nobody's watching. Nobody else is going to see it but me, right? So this is why I force myself to put myself out there,
Mhm.
because now I'm on display,
Yes.
you know, and being on display helps me tremendously. You know,
Yeah, when we think of ourselves as a public persona, the public's watching, we consider ourselves a professional on any level. An unofficial definition of being a professional is the show must go on. There's a
right?
paying there's a paying public that's waiting, and they don't care about all of our crap behind the scenes. The show must go on, right? And so when we have a mindset of responsibility to a paying public with a right to expect from us, it really helps us with more self accountability. The person doesn't have to be right in front of us asking us a question. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I've been on enough podcasts. I live a kind of public life a little bit, right?
Yep.
So we might are, I wasn't, we get more careful, but still, you know, when I'm holding you accountable, the external source, it's not just me and my skill set and my wherewithal, but it's the thousands of hours that I've spent holding other people accountable. So I'm trained on it. I'm skilled at it. I've got the communication. I got the dialogue. I got the techniques. Plus, I've held thousands of people accountable. Right. So there's all these advantages to external accountability source. Internal is good. It'll only get us so far. But boy, we need to be an honest champion for ourselves to even be in a position to hold ourselves accountable. And as committed as we are to productivity and top producing and out producing other people and nobody will outwork you, all these things that we can control, we're still human. We still let ourselves off the hook.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm not a big proponent of I can outwork you because that's just a pissing contest, right? I know how many hours a day I can put in, but we all get 24 freaking hours, right?
Yeah.
We can both run ourselves to our dicks in the dirt, but at the end of the day, it's just who can get what done. You know, One of the things that I really was blown away as I was building the company was I got to a point where, I almost lost the farm, almost lost everything, because building a business is fucking hard. Let's just be honest.
Really hard.
And when I got down to that kind of low point, I realized that my life had been a series of excuses, right? I was really, uh, I think working for other people, excuses come easy. If your sales numbers are down, the marketing sucks, the economy sucks, all these things are horrible. But when you
Yeah.
run your own business, man, you don't get those excuses anymore. Like if the numbers are down, go freaking sell more, right? If the marketing sucks, fix the fucking marketing. You know, and it's been a fascinating journey of realizing that it's all my fault, which has been one of my favorite phrases. Dude, that's on me. It's my fault. Um, I can get that level of accountability when it's outwardly bound and other people are watching. I don't have that same level of not allowing the excuses and things to come in when left to my own devices.
Yeah, well, that's a statement. I don't really hear the question, but I hear the
Oh,
question.
fair, fair,
Yeah, yeah,
fair,
yeah.
fair,
Yeah,
fair.
I hear the question. And it's cool, man. I mean, you're being as honest about this as anybody. You follow. That's the first step is admitting it. You're not right, and
Yep.
you can't build a mansion on top of quicksand. But back to this notion of integrity, right? You it's like, oh, do the right thing do the same thing when somebody's watching as you would when somebody's not watching.
Mm.
Right. That's the other definition of integrity. When I'm doing public speaking and workshops on accountability and goal setting and all the things that I'm, leadership training and so forth, I play the integrity game. It's a book that I wrote last year called The Integrity Game. And I asked the audiences, how many of you believe you have integrity? Guess how many people raise their hand?
Everybody.
100%.
Yeah.
So I say, okay, keep your hand up and repeat after me. I do solemnly swear not to shoot the messenger in 45 minutes when the keynote is done, because at 45 minutes, I'm going to ask you again. We're going to see how fast y'all raise your hands. We're going to see, first of all, if 100% of you raise your hands, and secondly, how fast. Maybe some hesitation. Hang on. But before I offend my audience, right? And don't want to offend yours either. What is it? Let's make sure we're talking about the same thing.
Right?
So this is where I really want to slow it down, Donnie, because this is the opportunity for internal, external accountability, reframing what it means to have integrity, to manage our expectations that we set for self and others. What is the concept of integrity? So I'll ask people before, hey, I want good reviews. I want to be invited back for the keynote again next year. Don't let me offend you. Let's make sure we're talking about the same thing. And so I'll ask, what is integrity? And I get these two answers every time. Be your word, do what you say you're going to do, or do the right thing regardless of who's watching. So you're just in the statement that you made, I don't always do the thing. the same thing regardless of who's watching. I might behave different if,
Because I
and
didn't
then,
take into account who's watching is my freaking self, right?
well, always
Right?
every job's an
100%.
inside job, right?
Yep, yep.
And yeah, so here's the thing. I like these two answers for two reasons. Okay. And I pin them on the board. I kind of like visually puppeteer my audience a little bit. But so let's put be your word, do what you say you're going to do over here on this side of the board. Let's put do the right thing regardless of who's watching on this side. So the two reasons I like those, number one, is because when we be our word, when we do what we say, there's an integration of word with behavior. There's a coming together of word with behavior.
Okay.
And then when we do the right thing, regardless of who's watching, there's an integration, a coming together of behavior with morals or values or ethics. So if it's a work ethic or it's an honesty or if it's a selflessness or whatever your ethic is, there's a coming together. When we do the right thing, regardless of who's watching, we've integrated our behavior with a moral, a value, or an ethic. When we be our word, we have integrated our behavior with a word. So what I love, first of all, is in both cases, there's an integration, a coming together of two or more things. Okay. But I asked everybody what's integrity, and not one person said it's an integration, the
Right.
status of being integrated. The same, they start with the same six letters. It's right in front of our face, but nobody conceptualizes coming together or not together when they think about integrity. They want to stay in judgment of others who weren't their word. They want to stay in judgment of those who didn't do the right thing. Now, the other thing I like about it, Donnie, is that behavior shows up in both integrations. Word with behavior over here and behavior with values over here. So I'm going to slow down when I say this. Behavior is the evidence of our integrity.
Tell me more.
It's not what I meant to do, what I thought I was going to do, I didn't mean to, or I was just trying to, or I was just gonna, or I didn't mean to. None of that. We judge ourselves by our intent, but the rest of the world is just judging our actions.
Mm. True. True.
So the evidence of our integrity is not what I said I was going to do and not what I said my values were. It's whether or not I behaved in an integrated way with what I said and integrated with my values.
Would you agree that's the result of what you did?
It not even so much, like, so the results are cool. Results are cool. Results are cool. Results are cool. Scoreboard, baby.
Right?
Okay. Okay. But you tell me what result you're going to get without behavior. Let me give you an example. I was coaching a real estate professional the other day, right?
Yep.
Real estate professional getting off the ground. I said, hey, look, we talked about the concept of activity points, right? So you think, oh, I got to make a sale, got to get a client, I got to get a listing, or I got to get a buyer in the car and show them houses. I got to open an escrow. I got to open an escrow, focusing on those results, right?
Yep.
But how about what are the behaviors that lead to opening an escrow? What are the behaviors that lead to getting a listing presentation? What are the behaviors? So just put and gamify it, right? Knock on doors, sit open houses, social media posts, writing blogs, offering to speak for free at homebuyer seminars. Like, just line up the behaviors that you'll take and have faith that the results will come if you're just consistent with those behaviors. A lot of times people focus on the results. They're trying to keep up with the Joneses, and they never focus on what's in front of them. Take one step and the next step reveal themselves. What's the behavior? What's the action? Coaches, we're concerned about behavior. Right? If you know this, I don't have to tell you, Donnie, do the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. It's insanity. I don't have to tell you. So let's get clear on what you want. And let's get clear on what behavior you need to change in order to get that result. Let's focus on the behavior. Sometimes I don't care about the results people get as long as they're focused on 100% accountability to their behaviors. The results will come.
So this is fascinating, and I agree with you. I always struggle with the word behavior because I think people don't fully wrap their head around the definition of a behavior, which in simplest terms is just an action that you
Yep.
will take, right?
Observable
Uh,
action.
yeah, yeah,
Observable action.
I like observable action, right?
Yeah. Observable
Um,
action.
because coming up in the sales game, people were like behavior, 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 and my head couldn't get past good or bad, right? It's either good behavior or bad behavior type of
Yeah, like
thing. So
the report cards in elementary
yeah,
school
yeah,
or
yeah,
whatever. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah, for sure.
100%, right? So I like to reframe. I like observable
Actions,
action. Yeah,
observable
yeah, yeah.
actions.
I,
Yeah,
I think
that's
that's
it.
smart. I really like that.
Mhm.
Um, you know, like for instance, I know one of the key actions I have to take is, and I'm telling more and more people this right now in the sales game. Go old school because cold calling is freaking crushing right now because your competition's not doing. Um, handwritten letters and things like that are just working really, really well right now because nobody's doing it. So, okay, I know cold calling, is something, a behavior, if you will, that I've got to do every, day to keep the company moving forward and do the things I need to do.
Yeah.
Right. Still the top sales guy in the company. Hopefully that's done by the end of 24, but that's where we're at right now. So that being the case, the way to make myself do these cold calls is I went to my community and said, cool, 8:30 to 9 every weekday. I'm going to open up a Zoom and I'm going to be there making cold calls. If you need to make cold calls for yourself, come in, sit on the Zoom and we're opening just like we're in a pit, making cold calls back together, celebrating and the likes. But I knew I had to create that level of a trap for myself,
Yes.
right? To be able to hold myself accountable to doing those type of things. And in my head, now I get to help others because they don't want to sit there and make cold calls by themselves because to be honest, it sucks. You know, so I don't think that's a flaw of mine. I think I just understand myself enough to know that I need that outside accountability. I guess my question along the lines is that the right move? I know it is because it's working for me, but what are your thoughts?
First of all, I don't believe in rights or wrongs, right?
Fair? Fair?
If we limit ourselves like that, we're screwed, right? So, like, a Jedi doesn't think in absolutes. What about both ands, right? Rather than
Right?
either ors. Okay. The other thing I would tell you real quick, and I don't know if you expected this, but I'm a bit of a wordsmith. I have a master's in communication. I've taught public speaking and group communication and persuasion and organizational communication, San Diego State University, in addition to being around the world, dealing with people with different cultures and languages, and the coaching still lands because of the communication skill. And I'll tell you right now, you don't set traps for yourself. Language is important. You create incentives. You follow?
See, I hear the words. I like traps better.
Yeah. Some
Um,
people are motivated like that pressure. If you rise to the
yep.
pressure, but you're
I'm
still,
I'm I'm definitely more motivated by fear than I am by pleasure.
okay. Yeah. Good for you. I mean, that's a great way to make that work. Cause then in other words, you say, oh, it's my fault. One of the phrases I fall in love with, it's my fault. Well, I would sit here and say, well, it's your responsibility. But if
So,
like fault, let me ask you,
I
I mean, it's like funny, I'm being interviewed, but let me ask you the question. How do you do that without getting over like crossing a line into beating yourself up
oh, no,
unnecessarily?
that one's really easy, and I answered
Yeah.
that really, really on I love the question, thank you for
Yeah.
it back. So what I found and it was after reading Extreme Ownership by Jocko, right? But,
Yeah.
just a phenomenal freaking book, and reading that book, it really opened my eyes up that I blamed a lot of other people for how I showed up in life and how I carried myself, and it never was my fault, it was always something outside of myself.
Yeah.
The phraseology of "it's my fault" is not saying I have a fault. It's saying I fucked up, right? And what I've found, especially with my team, the more I can say it's my
Yeah.
fault, right? I'm not saying I'm faulty, and I understand that. They instantly go into, let's fix it mode, let's work on it, let's figure out where it's screwed up, let's
Yep.
figure out where it's broke. If I don't step in and take ownership of it, then the words almost come out like I'm blaming them. But when I can step in and like, "Customer's pissed. Sorry, guys, that one's on me. I should have done X." Now they can go into solutions mode versus any other way. So that's why I've
Yeah.
used it.
Yeah. Yeah. Ownership, taking responsibility for it. Yeah. That's the, we're the ambiguity of language, but yeah, it's interesting how clear you are about how you're wired and what works for you. Right.
This is 6 years of building a business really trying to meet the dude in the mirror, right?
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
tell everybody in the world that if you really wanna understand what you're made of, what makes you tick, go start a company because you're gonna meet the
Yep.
dude in the mirror real fucking quick.
Yeah, real fast. Yeah, you can't run or hide from that one. It's interesting too when you talk about back to this concept of like integrity and do the right thing when nobody's watching, and how do I the external accountability? Because if I'm not doing the best job holding myself accountable, so like what happens to Donnie? What happens to building a bridge or a tunnel without structural integrity? It
Right?
collapses under
For
pressure
sure.
tests, right? So
Yep.
I'm here to say, like, well, we're no different. A human being, a team, or an organization is no different. So when I running the integrity game, I'm doing like both, right? You're going to have better chance at the external accountability source working if the external accountability source knows what they're holding you accountable for. So back to this concept of what is integrity. Somebody says, well, do what you say you're going to do. Well, if I said I was going to drink 24 beers before I got on your podcast today, and then I drank 24 beers before I got on the podcast, I will have done what I said I was going to do, but could I claim integrity? And then there's some smart ass and be like, well, no, not if you're trying to test your functional alcoholism. Well, I'm not. That's not what I'm trying to do. But we know the answer is no. Being your word isn't good enough. Part of it, but it's not good enough. I can say if I tell you that I'm going to sleep on the couch for 22 out of every 24 hours, and then I did it 22 out of 24 hours, could I claim integrity? We know the answer is no. If I said I was going to get into my car and drive into the first pedestrian I saw, and then I got in the car and I hit the first pedestrian I saw, I will have done what I said I was going to do, but could I claim integrity? You forget the smart asses as well. If you stop it, right? That's why we don't like that. Be your word, right? Because somebody says, well, do what you say you're going to do. What I want to hold people accountable for is, why did you say you're going to do that? Right? In other words, just be your word isn't good enough. There's other things that we need to integrate into this mix for structural integrity. And now on the other side, here's what's funny. I think it's funny. I don't know if you think. I think you got a great sense of humor, by the way. But let's tell me if you think this is funny, right? Yes or no, without getting over simple. Yes or no, should we tell the truth? Yes or no, should we ever lie? Most people would, of course not. Well,
no,
unless
there's times.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying, right? So, right, like there's a percentage of our country that can't even agree on who the president is or what's true. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Do you follow? Like, so what's right or wrong? What's good or bad? Isn't it a moving target? Who's to decide? So most people that say do the right thing, regardless of who's watching, they're just judging other people and projecting their values onto others. What the integrity game is about is me not telling you what the right thing is, me asking you what the right thing is. And then when I know what you think the right thing is, I'm going to hold you accountable to that.
Fascinating. All right.
You follow?
Yeah,
So,
I do.
Yeah.
So hold on.
Go ahead.
So define integrity then.
Integrity is the status of two or more things that are integrated, two or more things that are together have integrity.
So give me an example.
Well, there's other flowery definitions, like, state of wholeness. we
just went all fucking move. All right, got it.
Yeah. We can go there. I didn't think that that's where you wanted to go. Right. But you understand what I'm trying to do is expand our understanding. Because when I ask people, and I've asked thousands of people on Zooms and retreats and seminars, and keynote speeches and leadership seminars and soft skill trainings, I always start off and I ask, how many of you believe you have integrity? That's my, all right, keep your head up. And I make the joke. And then I say, well, what is it? And what most people think integrity is either be your word or do the right thing, regardless of who's watching. And I'm trying to say, cool, that gets the party started, right? But it's not good enough. Because if I just said that I was going to sleep 22 out of 24 hours and I did that, I wouldn't have integrity. And sometimes I need to, withhold the truth. Sometimes I need, elf on a shelf. Oh my God, don't lie. Except we lie to our kids 26 days straight for elf on a shelf when we're hiding that thing around and trying to guilt them into good behavior with some imaginary little creature that we have to, the worst. Are you kidding? Why? How come, Donnie, my wife doesn't ask me to move the damn elf when I'm on my feet? She waits until I get into bed. And then once I lay down, the elf. I don't even, it's not even that I grew up celebrating Christmas in different religion, right? But I'm going down at 2:15 in the morning, move some elf to lie to my kid. But
but that's not a bad lie.
Hey, it depends on the harm of it all, right? It's who's to say is what my point is. Good or bad, right or wrong, clean or dirty, civil, savage, saintly, demonic. Those are all moving targets. They're adjectives. They're perceptions in the minds of the beholder, right? So what I think the right thing is may be different from somebody else thinks the right thing is. The right thing. Let me ask you a question without overthinking it. Sometimes, do you believe, without overthinking it, do you believe that time is money?
Yes.
Do you believe that patience is a virtue?
Patience is a learned skill. I can't say it's a virtue, right?
Well, not for you. You're hardwired to go. Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
But you understand what I'm getting at, right?
Yep.
Watch this. Do you believe that if you never quit, you never lose?
I don't believe in lost win.
Fair. Well, my point is, there's this saying out there: never give up, never give up. If you never quit, you never lose. But there's other sayings out there that says you better know to cut your losses.
Right. I'm also a guy that will tell people all the time, if you want the people who find people who find success, different game, not sex. People find success or the ones that are most likely too dumb to throw in the towel. Like when logic said that, you should go back, get the job, everything else. There's too many times.
Well,
I
point is,
also get that that's
yeah,
not a
it's a
black and white
purgatory.
statement.
It's a purgatory, right? Like there's conflicting success principles.
Yes, I agree with that.
That's what I'm getting at. And so whichever one I'm focused on is going to be the one that leads to my observable action. Does it make sense? But it's
Yes,
a moving target. Right? It's a moving target. Like back to running a business. Business is hard. Well, business doesn't care about my self-talk. Business doesn't care about my ego. Business doesn't care about my leadership. Business, my name is business and I have needs. My needs. Market, sales, operations, finance. I don't
right.
care about, right? Business is completely objective. There's no emotion. There's no story. There's no drama at all. You're either meeting the accountabilities or you're not. Right. So when we play the integrity game, we're expanding our understanding of integrity to just include integration when two or more things are together. But word with behavior is good, but not enough. And behavior with values is good, but not enough. So I introduced in my book a 10-point model. There are 10 things, 10 sets of questions, 10 things that I believe people, individuals, teams, and organizations can integrate. So the integrity game is very simple. It's understanding 10 sets of questions. It gets harder when we answer those questions. It gets even harder to make sure our answers go together rather than repel each other.
Give me an example of one of them.
One of them. Are you ready?
Yep.
Well, let's start at the top, right? Purpose.
Okay.
Purpose. What's the meaning? Like theoretically, do you have a meaning for life? What do you believe the meaning of life is? Do you value life in any way? Do you have any thought leadership in your life, right? Do you value life? But then what's the purpose of your life? Most people don't. If I walk down the street and I say, hey, what's your life's purpose? Most people won't have an answer.
I
But
agree with
they're,
that as well.
but they're the same people that are raising their hand that they have integrity. I mean, if you don't know your life purpose, if you don't have an answer to life purpose, everything else that you are doing in your life is building a mansion on top of quicksand.
What's fascinating to me about this was a flip flop for me this year. Is Tony Watley, who's getting really well known out there, good buddy of mine. I had him on the podcast, and one of the things he said to me was, "If and it's the old country song, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything."
Yeah.
And what he
That's
says
it.
he found is most people are out there and they're soundbiting life. Right?
Hmm.
They're not really standing in their own firm beliefs on any sort of topic and subject. And I started asking myself, I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, what the hell do I actually fucking believe in? And dude, that was a long
Powerful.
journey. It is. Because I didn't know what I don't want soapbox, but I didn't know where I wanted to plant my flag. And so I've been on a journey this year. I'm like, okay, what are my beliefs? And what's funny is the question that got me to figure out some of my beliefs the best is, what are my contrarian views? What are the views that everybody says this is the way? And I'm like, no, that's fucking stupid. And that's what helped me figure out my beliefs. And unfortunately, not unfortunately, but a lot of it has to center around with, networking and how people network and alike, because a lot of stupid shit that's taught out there is just ignorant and shouldn't be taught in the first place. But that's by finding those contrarian views has helped me figure it out, what my own, where do I stand?
Well, so now you got this question set: purpose, meaning, purpose, right? Okay. So if you got to answer that question, now you've got like one pillar in place for your structural integrity. So in other words, what are your contrarian views? Dot dot dot. What you would willing to take a stand for?
Mm,
What you're not willing to compromise on, right? Like
yep.
when some outside influence comes your way, you repel it like a 5-mile-an-hour wind against a building because you've got structural integrity because you know what your values are. If the view is one thing, but what holds that view in place in your life on a day-to-day basis is the value, right? You understand? So
Yep.
now
Yep.
you've got bricks for your structural integrity. So, another question is gifts in one word, but it translates into competitive advantages. So first of all, on the woo-woo side, the psycho-emo side, what's your mindset around giving? Are you a hoarder, pack rat, freak? You afraid of running out of stuff and you grew up in scarcity, so you can't give anything away? Or are you afraid to receive? You won't let anybody do anything for you because you grew up in scarcity and you don't want to be reminded what you didn't have growing up. I got it, I'm fine. So what's the mindset around being willing to give, being willing to receive on the psycho-emo woo-woo? Then breaking down into, well, what are God-given gifts? First of all, am I responsible to those? Can I acknowledge my God-given gifts? Like every day above the ground's a good day, but we're all born with some shit, right? And
Yep.
then man-made. What are the gifts that other human beings have been willing to give to me? Man-made. and then self-generated. What am I doing for myself? Am I cultivating my gifts and cultivating, investing, owning my gifts? What it translates into, and you know this from a marketing perspective, competitive advantage. So theoretically, anything other than the average, even the mistakes and the fuck ups, is a gift as long as we're willing to learn from the fuck up. But anything other than
Agreed.
average is a gift, like special differentiation, right? So now if I know what my gifts are, back to business building, why would I, like, I'm a communication guy. I'm not going to go out there and try to sell on numbers and math. I'm a communication guy. I need
Right?
to know, I'm a fast paced, humor laced, in your face speaker. I'm jovial. I'm theoretical, but I'm also dumb it down with the wordsmithing and make it playful. Like, I know what my competitive advantages are. I've got a master's degree in communication. How many other coaches do? I got 20 plus years experience teaching public speaking, getting people past the fear of public speaking. How many other coaches do? Right. So what makes me better than every coach that also does what I do? And what's different about me than any, what are my gifts? So some people don't even stop to celebrate on their gifts because right. I need to be humble. I don't like drawing attention to myself or any of these bullshit excuses that they tell themselves. Like, well, wait a second. If you're not honest about your gifts, how the hell the rest of the world's going to know? How are they going to hire you instead of somebody else? Why are they going to buy produce from your farm instead of any other farm? What's the differentiation? We have to let the world know how and why we're different. Now, there's plenty of people in the world. Those that like me will buy from me. Those that like you buy for you. But nobody's going to buy from me if I don't differentiate myself, which is my gift. My gift to the marketplace, my gift to my business, my gift to myself is getting super, super clear about what makes me different and better than anybody else that you can get my stuff from. Right?
I would add in there, and I
Yeah.
agree. I would add in there that it's also your beliefs that draw the right people in and repel the right people away as well.
No
Um,
doubt.
because
No doubt.
like the first time I cussed on stage, it was the funniest thing in the world. Is half the freaking room goes bananas. The other half was like, I can't believe you said that. And, for me, it was like one of those moments, and like, I knew instantly, like, these are the people I'm talking to. Fuck all these people. Right.
Mhm.
Right. I'm never going to be able to get there. So I think your beliefs have to be thrown on there as well. It goes back to what's that soapbox you're willing to freaking stand on.
Yeah, you want to know. Yeah, yeah. You want to know when you talk about purpose, you can talk about values, attitudes, beliefs, etc. For you, like on my 10-point model, beliefs aren't an individual point, but they're the adhesive that
Fair.
holds these things together. And so, as a metaphor, imagine a tennis shoe, right? And when
Okay.
we're lacing up the tennis shoe, so we go into one hole, we go across to the other hole. Now we got two strings. We go diagonal, 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 and back up to top, diagonal, diagonal, diagonal. So imagine 5 holes on one side, 5 holes on the other side. Each hole represents the 10 points on my model. So now the laces don't tie the shoe. The laces integrate the left side with the right side. The laces bring the left side together closer with the right side. The laces don't tie the shoe. The laces give the shoe structural integrity. The laces are allow the shoe to stay on our foot, do what it's built to do what it's made to do. Right. So that's where when I talk about adhesive or laces or what's the most valuable part of a baseball, it's not the leather, it's not the cork, the seams. If you can't hold that leather together, you got no baseball. Right. So
100%.
yeah, go ahead.
So going back to your first question, which was, purpose.
Mhm.
Once I have that figured out, what's the next thing I got to integrate it with?
Well, if you're going chronologically, first of all, it all integrates.
Cool.
Okay. But we have to discuss the module in a linear form. So the second point on the model when I'm doing a keynote or when I'm introducing it to people is gifts. And sometimes, by the way, what if you don't know your purpose? Can I still work on my integrity game even if I don't know my purpose? Yeah. Start working on your gifts. After you have an idea of what your competitive advantages are, now go back and revisit purpose. Maybe you'll have some answers. Right. I
Yeah.
should not be injecting lab rats with the serum to try to get some drug to market approved by the FCC or something like, you know what I mean? Like, or you know what I mean?
Yep.
That's not my purpose in life. My purpose in life is about, content, reproduction, communication, and right. So, and I know that from understanding my gifts, right? But then if I know my purpose and I know my gifts, now I can come closer down to ground level and start asking questions of potential, right? So that's a third rung on my model or third rung on my ladder or third loop in my shoe is potential. And we break it down. It's going to sound more familiar to business owners and leaders and CEOs, et cetera. Vision, mission, objectives. So when I'm taking people through this, right? Vision is a lot of times you've seen people confuse these. There's some flowery mission statement on the wall, but doesn't mean shit. Right.
Yep.
So I try to make it a little more actionable. Ready? Vision is when you look out as far into your future as you could possibly see, describe what you see. That's your vision is when you look at as far. Now, mission is still far ways away, but it's closer than vision. It's nearer than vision, but it's an arrival. It's a destination. It's an accomplishment. It's not just a description of what's there. The mission is we're on a mission, right? Like an accomplishment, an arrival, an achievement that still takes a little bit of time, right? But it proves we're on our way to the vision. And then objectives is the third breakdown for annual. So vision is far out as we can see, mission still far a ways away, but it's a destination rather than a description. And then objectives are, what are our annual objectives this year? What are the things we're working on so that we may advance towards the mission? So if Kennedy says, hey, we're going to be number one in space exploration, we're on a mission to get a person to the moon and return them safely. So our objectives this year are the lunar reentry module and the boots that people are going to walk, Neil Armstrong's going to use. These are our objectives. So then the fourth point on my integrity game model is less than a year is goal setting. Right? Goal setting is, really sets us up for transactional accountability rather than accountability of holding people accountable to their purpose and their gifts and their potential. When we start to get into goal setting quarterly, what do you need to achieve by April 1st of 2024 to feel that you're strongly on your way to meet your annual objectives? Then April 1st, July 1st, October 1st, quarterly goal setting gets us into that observable action that we were talking about earlier at the beginning of the show. Like, does that make sense? Like,
Yeah, but it takes it all the way back to one more step is to where we started is what's the behaviors that allow those goals to actually take place?
observable actions, right?
Yep.
Exactly. Like
Yep.
I have a little joke in my head. The goal bone's connected to the strategy bone, and the strategy bone's connected to the tactic bone, and the tactic bone's connected to the resource bone, and the resource bone connected to the commitment bone, and the next appointment with self and next observable action. So once I can chisel all of that down, when I know what your goal is, I know what you want to achieve by April 1st, we can say, well, what are your strategies? Is it cold calling? Is it door knocking? Is it podcasting? Is it networking? What's the strategy? Okay. What's the next observable action to execute that strategy? Okay. What's the best day of the week to do that? When's the best time of the day to do that? Okay. Write this way to your calendar, please. Go ahead and make an appointment with yourself in your calendar. Same way I showed up a couple minutes early to our appointment this morning. Why don't people make appointments with themselves to do the observable actions, to execute the strategies, to meet their goals, objectives, mission, vision, da, 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 da. So it's a framework. It's an accountability. The integrity game is an accountability framework. If I can get your answers to all 10 question sets, I know exactly what I'm holding you accountable. And it's not what my clients have done. I'm not holding you accountable to what they've done or what I would do if I were you or what the Joneses did or the Kardashians, for Christ's sakes. I'm holding you accountable to your answers.
Well, yeah, and I hear all of this. I can also hear my listeners going, "God, this sounds like so much." Like
It's a lot.
there's a lot of pieces here. And I know
Mhm.
one of the things where I screw up on accountability is the fear of boredom, right? Like if I know that it's an activity that I'm not going to enjoy, that is one that I can slough off with the best of them, right? So I do distractive learning is the best way I can put it, right? Like I can't sit down and have somebody lecture me and expect to figure something out. So I have
Right.
to either do it or I can't write a paper without music going in the background, right? I need to have that distraction to be able to do the activity.
Almost like the equal and opposite reaction is the focus.
Yes, 100%.
Mhm.
100%. Right? So when it comes to something that I presume might be a boring behavior, I have to gamify it, right? I have to do
Yep.
something to trick myself, if you will, into doing said activity. I saw you flinch as soon as I said trick, but you didn't like that word. But
It's a I don't mind trick when it's followed by and treat, but anyway. We're playing with each other. That's
Yeah, yeah,
fine.
yeah, yeah.
It's good to get to know you this way.
I saw that communication degree go whoop. I saw that one. But that's the thing, and when I'm walking through your list, even though we've done a lot of those things inside the company, the mission, the vision, we call
Yep.
them champions codes versus core values. You
Mhm.
set out the quarterly objectives, right? We're working through all those things. It can get overwhelming really quick because at some point you kind of sit back and you look at all that and go, "Shit, this is a lot." Right? And you're trying to hold that all in your brain housing group, and that can really quickly turn into almost overwhelm for some. And I can guarantee some of my listeners are sitting there right there. They're like, God, how do I manage all of this?
Well, that's the wrong question.
Okay.
First of all, ask a better question, right? Like, right? You know what? I'm just going to say right now, a lot of people out there suffer from halitosis. It's the bad breath that we smell when people aren't ready to take action. They'd rather say, how do I do this? How do I do this? Rather than saying, when do I do this? When's a good time to do this? Like, when do I get started? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
The mindset is, you don't want to believe that anything, like people say, oh, I'm overwhelmed. Bullshit. You're a fucking human being. We put people on the moon. We built Vegas. Don't tell me
Right.
about overwhelm. We've got computers and AI. At best, you're whelmed.
At
But
best, I would say you
but
might be confused.
people will say overwhelmed to excuse themselves from doing the work. Now, building a house is a lot, right? The nails, the wood, the measurements, the plans. It's a lot, right? Does that mean we shouldn't do it because it's overwhelmed? Or does it mean that just do it? We're going to be able to enjoy it for the 30 years thereafter. So in other words,
The
the what's harder? What's harder? Building a solid concrete slab foundation or building a mansion on top of quicksand? What's harder?
Well, we know the answer to that. I just the it is overwhelming if you've never done it before. We have to acknowledge that the
Yeah.
first time looking at it, you're like, "Fuck, this is a shit ton." Right? However, you have the choice at that point to either say, "Fuck it, I'm going anyways,"
Yes.
or "I'm gonna stay in a place of overwhelm."
Yeah, exactly. Because guess what? It's funny. Like, what are we comparing it to? If all I'm looking at is 10 questions on a soft skill, personal, professional growth model, right? 10 questions. And I'm like, oh, that's a lot, right? Well, why would I be looking at those in the first place? Well, because there's a lot going on when I'm not looking at them too. It's overwhelm, it's confusion, it's paranoia, it fits and starts and so forth. So maybe you don't have to go through all 10 points, but people come into coaching and say, well, where does it hurt? Does it hurt here? Does it hurt here? Does it hurt here? Now, for me as a coach, it becomes like a diagnostic. I know when I'm talking to somebody if they don't have answers to questions of purpose. I know if I'm talking to somebody if they don't have their competitive advantage and their gifts. I know down the 10th question said is service. Who wins when you win? Who are the people that benefit when you win? Who else wins? Who are you serving? When your cup runs over, who gets the runoff?
Right?
And can you integrate who you're serving with your purpose? Well, I know when people aren't have no connection to serving others. I know when people aren't willing to recognize their own accomplishments. I know when people would prefer to learn the hard way instead of proactive learning. I know when people aren't strategic about what they're doing. I know when people aren't taking action. I know if they don't have purpose. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So for coaches out there that want a model to be a better coach, you don't even necessarily have to take people through it and have them answer the questions. We just use it as our own internal diagnostic. Follow, does it hurt
Yeah.
here? Does it hurt one competitive? So yeah, and by the way, like, how do you eat an elephant?
One bite at a time.
You got it. That's how you play the integrity game. You just answer one set of questions at a time. So maybe you piecemeal it. Maybe you work on it 30 minutes a week instead of letting it be overwhelmed.
And I also think that there's a you're gonna learn it as you go. I go back to learning how to cold call. Like, it finally took a bottle of Captain Morgan sitting beside me to be able to pick up the phone the first time and make cold calls, right? Just because I was so freaked out of that whole activity. And
That's
but
surprising, by the way. You come off a little bit more fearless than that to me, but go ahead.
but now, because of learning that behavior, I'll stand in front of a room of people and do live dials in front of a room.
Yeah.
But, going all the way back to the beginning of a 22-year-old kid trying to do cold calls, that's a whole different ball game, right? You know, and so I'm just a firm believer that almost everything is learned, right? We do have some innate things that we are born with, but we learn most everything. And when I think about all of this, it comes back to what are the individual actions that you can take in the moment that will continue to move you forward? How do you hold yourself accountable to those particular actions?
Yeah. Actions is one of the 10 points on the model. Getting clear on the mindset of being an action taker. Right? That doesn't mean willy-nilly reckless per se. But we want to avoid analysis paralysis. We want to build the muscle memory for taking action. We want to, if we're entrepreneurial in any way, shape, or form, we got to know when to jump out of the airplane and really believe in our parachutes rather than the ground. you know, but yeah, action taking is a big piece of it. But when it comes to integrity, we got to wake people up. Most people think they have 100% integrity. They raise their hand when everybody's watching, but it's like, wait, how many things do you do in a day? I'll ask the crowd. Imagine public speaking, right? How many
Yep.
things does a normal person do in a day? And I kind of help them out sometimes too, like depending on how much time I have. Somebody give me a number like 100. How many things do we do in a day? And somebody will say 100. Thank you. Okay.
Right.
Now, of those 100, how many of those 100 are integrated with things we've said we would do?
Mm.
Now it's less than, right?
Yep.
Of the 100 that we do, how many of them are expectations that we set for self and others, right? John Wooden, the famous basketball coach, says, never mistake activity with achievement.
Right.
People staying busy all the time, but are they productive? Are they on and on? So if we do 100 things, maybe 10 of them are things we said we would do. And I'm like, all right, well, how many things do we, somebody thought a number like 15. How many things do we say we'll do in a day? And somebody will throw out a number like 15. Okay. Of the 15 that you say you're going to do, how many of them do you really do? And somebody will be honest, like 3. Okay. Well, here's a different question. How many of the 15 things you said you were going to do are the next observable action from a chosen strategy? Right? Because that's one of the points on the model: strategies, tactics, resources. So, am I going to cold call? Am I going to door knock? Am I going to network? Am I going to flood a market with? Am I going to partner with a title rep and flood a market with, flyers and be ready when the phone rings? Am I going to? Am I going to invest? Am I going to buy it? Am I going to hold? Am I going to fix? Am I going to flip? What's your strategy? He wants to pick a strategy, proven strategy that somebody with your behavioral style, your competitive advantages, is instinctually going to be capable of executing, because it's not one size doesn't fit all when it comes to strategy, right?
100%.
But is the strategy integrated with the goal, from the objective, from the potential, from the get? You follow. So 15, you say you're going to do 15 things a day. Your to-do list have 15 things on it. How many of those are the next observable action of a strategy? Don't all raise your hand at once.
Right.
So in the middle of the model, when I talk about strategies, tactics, and resources, when I talk about word and commitment, how many things do we give our word to and commit to, and what do we do? Those transactional pieces in the middle. How many of you want to raise your hand now? Of the 100 that you do, maybe 15 are strategic. Of the 15 you commit to, maybe 3 of them you actually do, and none of them are strategic. But you all raise your hands. You say you have integrity. Does it make sense? So, like,
It does.
what I'm trying to do is be fast paced, humor laced, and a little bit of in people's face. Like, look, stop pointing the finger at everybody else when you're accusing everybody else of not having integrity, and let's make it easy and fun to look within and play our own game. The integrity game. It's easy to understand these questions, like you mentioned earlier. It's harder when you sit down and try to answer them.
Yes. Very
But
much
if I
so.
have answers to these 10 questions and my answers go together rather than dilute each other, I'm going to have structural integrity. And then when something comes into my life that wants to distract me from doing what I'm supposed to do, made to do, built to do, because that's right. What am I built to do? What am I on this planet to do? And if I don't have answers to my questions, I can be blown over like a feather in the wind. One of my mentors, Brian Tracy, taught me that weeds grow on their own. They need no help from us. Like, we're foolish if we think that unwanted experiences are never going to happen, unwanted occurrences. There's never going to be a pandemic. There's never going to be, you know, a political status of the country. There's never going to be a tornado or a hurricane. My employees are never going to get sick. Uh, there's going to be so those things will take us down if we don't have answers to our questions first. When we have answers to our questions, these unwanted things, they're going to bounce off us like a 5-mile-an-hour wind. Right. So when we talk about leadership, the 3 pillars of leadership, I like to get people engaged in what they're doing. I like to provide motivation, which is strategies, tactics, and resources, or getting people out of their own way mentally. And then I like to make it non-threatening to hold people accountable, but hold people accountable to what they want, not what I want them to want. Like, the first accountability is tell me what you want. That's the number one accountability. Goal setting. What do you want? Who are you? What do you want? That's number one.
How often do you ask that question that people are like, I have no fucking clue?
Well, I love when people say that, because my last name's Klubeck, and, get a clue is, you got a clue now, baby.
Right?
Listen, it depends on what they need. I mean, I would coach you differently than I'd coach somebody with a different behavioral style. With you, I got to be fast paced. I got to be direct, no bullshit, no flower, no philosophical
And
theoretical.
as my
Although,
coach Jerry tells me all the time, Donnie, when I'm fixing to tell you, don't take any action on it. Let's get through what I'm fixing to tell you, then we'll decide what we're going to do with it.
yeah, because you're listening. Tell me what to do. Tell me what to do. Tell me
Yeah.
what to do. You're spring loaded like a
Yep.
mousetrap to get
Yep.
into action. So a good coach is going to say, hang on, be patient with this part. We'll get to the good part, but I'm not just going to tell you the action. And you may be a good soldier like that. Just tell me what to do and I'll do it. Let's tell you why you're doing it, because I know you're going to do it, but with a little bit of the why, you'll be more resilient when you're doing it. You'll be more focused when you're
100%.
doing it. You'll be able to withstand the unexpected things that are going to come up while you're doing it. Right. With a little bit more of that foundation, that structure. You know what I'm saying? So,
Well, this is also the
mhm.
power of having a badass team around you that can do the things that you're not strong at. and
Full
slow you down.
full circle. It's a form of external accountability. When you benefit from the other lenses through which your team members view the world, you expand your choices on what you're going to commit to because you got different
Well,
perspectives.
and I tell everybody, in a loving manner that my wife is my Jiminy Cricket. I'm like, I have a moral compass. She has an extreme moral compass, right? So if I'm gray area, all you gotta do is ask Elizabeth, and right, I instantly, without even batting an eye, she's always gonna make the right call. You know, so but it's something I need in my life. You know,
Yes, yeah.
so
Often refer to my wife as the rings around my Saturn. Right? And I could tell when somebody's not married too. I'm like, hey man, put this on. You'll be home in 20 minutes.
right. Dude, this has been awesome, man. What a fun conversation. I never know what I'm getting into in these, so good to freaking get to know you, man. I've really enjoyed this, and you can tell you've got the public speaking game down well. So good on that.
Yeah,
How do people?
just a small plug. If anybody out there needs a dynamic, fast-paced, in-your-face, humor-laced speaker for their event, their association, their retreat, I love facilitating. I love delivering the integrity game keynote and then doing workshops around it, getting people into action on their structural integrity, their foundation, so they're resilient, focused, and on their way to their potential. But you had another question, it sounded like.
No, that's perfect. I lead right into is how do people find you if they want to reach out
Oh,
to you?
super easy to find. You type in Jeff Klubeck, I'll come up. I'm not big enough yet where other people are screening my social media. So if you instant message me on LinkedIn or Facebook or any of the channels, I get my stuff. I'm very easy to find. Getaclue.net is the old website, the old Get a Clue brand, and we're building up the Integrity Game brand now. So you can search for the Integrity Game. It's available on Amazon. It's a little parable, 135 pages. There's a mentor and a mentee, and they just go on a journey to introduce the 10 points on the model. So it's very easy to digest. Back to your point, we don't want to overwhelm anybody. We're using the
100%.
Trojan horse of the business parable to get the model. So if people type in integrity game or get a clue or Jeff Klubeck, I'm super, super easy to find.
That's awesome. Guys, go get his stuff, go get his books, jump in. I'm sure it's going to be a good time. Brother, thanks for doing this. It's always a pleasure. And guys, if you are still hanging out with us and still got any tips, tricks, any value out of this, do us a favor. Take a screenshot wherever you're listening to this or watching this and tag both me and Jeff in this. And if we see it, dude, we'll jump in, we'll comment, we'll interact with you. We're both still building our brand, so we want to meet you. And I want to know if the content is the content you continue to wish me to put out. So take a screenshot, tag us in it. It would mean the world to us. Otherwise, love you, made it. See you. Bye.